Good morning, African Confessions. I am back with another episode. There is a story that I want to share with you guys, and the message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? I want to thank you for your program. I am here to offload all that I have been carrying in my heart for a very long time. I have been keeping this secret in my heart, and I didn't have anyone to share with my story. This is the first time that I am telling someone my story. None of my relatives or my friends know that me and my husband, we are doing all of these things that we are doing. Whenever I visit my mother, when I look at her, I can see that in her eyes she will be filled with joy, thinking that me and my husband, all the success that we are experiencing, it is a blessing from God. But what my mother doesn't know is that all of this success that me and my husband we are experiencing currently, it is because of all the things that we are doing in the shadows. I am a married woman, my brother, but my husband and I, we are heavily involved in this thing of blood money. My husband was a truck driver before he finally started his own company, but he was a local truck driver. He used to carry potatoes, especially from Limpopo, in the farms in a place called Old Days. Then he will bring those potatoes back to the market whenever my husband will be out on work. When you come back home, you will tell me a lot of stories. He will tell me all of the stories that he was hearing from the people who were working on those farms that he was going to pick up the potatoes. That is when I heard that even across the border, there are people who are Zulu speaking. One day, my husband came back home, but he had another man with him, and this stranger shared the same surname with my husband, even though he was from across the border. My husband used to call him brother, but he was a foreigner, simply because they were sharing the same surname. We stayed with him, but when my husband came with that guy, he had brought a lot of herbs with him that was inside his bag. My husband then one morning told me to wash all the clothes that were in the house. My husband was also helping me. It was the first time my husband helping me to do the laundry. We woke up early in the morning, then we heaped all of the clothes on top of the bed. Then we started selecting all of the old clothes. Then we threw them away. I didn't understand why my husband was making me to throw away some of my clothes that I loved. They were old, but they were still good. Some of them I used to wear them even when I was going out on functions. But my husband told me that the man that he had brought to the house, he had came to do some rituals for us. He wanted to chase all of the bad luck away. My husband told me that he had been given an instruction by that man whom he was calling his elder brother to throw away all of our old clothes. By throwing away all our old clothes, we will be throwing away bad luck. So I did as my husband had told me. But one thing that I learned from my husband is that my husband is not an honest man. He is not the cheating type, but he is just not honest. He can tell you that I am in such a place, but he will be lying to you, not because he will be cheating on you. He just loves lying like that. When my husband told me that when we were throwing all of our old clothes away, it was because we wanted to chase away the bad luck that was in the family. Then the next thing, my husband changed his statement. He said that he is facing a challenge because his manhood at that time was no longer working properly. He would give you a lot of excuses. Sometimes when he would come back home from a very long trip, maybe after 2 weeks, and when you try to make love to him and you find out that his manhood is not working at all, then he will start to complain that it is because of all the driving that he has been doing, sitting all day and sometimes driving through the night with his truck. That is the reason why his manhood was no longer functioning properly. when I kept on asking him, why are we throwing all of our clothes away? Because after we had heaped all of our old clothes on the bed, he gave our clothes to his so-called elder brother. I didn't like it because of what I saw. After we had heaped up all of our old clothes, his so-called elder brother came. Then he took the clothes and he said that he wanted to burn them. We went with him to the back of our yard. Then he started burning them, but as he was burning them, he was selecting some of my panties and he was looking at them, then throwing them in the fire. This I didn't like. How can a man allow another man to touch your own wife's undergarments? That didn't sit properly with me. All along, my husband, he had been drinking a lot of herbs. Most of these herbs, he would get them from Venda, since he was someone who was always going to Limpopo with his truck. So when he would return back home, he would be having most of the herbs that they use there in Venda to make a man strong in bed. But I kept on asking him, why are you doing this to yourself? All of these herbs that you are drinking, they'll end up damaging your kidney or your liver, because none of those herbs were making him stronger. They didn't work on him, those herbs. My husband then told me that when he had gone to get a load of cabbage at a farm there in old days, that is when he met this man that he came with at our house at that time. So when he came with that man, we didn't have a house of our own. We were just renting, but we were renting a full house. Since my husband's salary was good, we were not struggling at all. So when my husband met with that man, he told him that his manhood is no longer performing, and he tried all the herbs, but nothing had worked. That man then told my husband that one of my relatives was using him as a husband at night, and it was true, because I have my auntie who is not a good person at all. My auntie, she is just evil. I believed it, because when that man told us that after me and my husband had been married, my auntie, she had used my husband's money in a ritual so that we can have a lot of bad luck. And at that time, there was something funny that happened. That is why when we were consulting with that man, I believed him when he was telling us that my auntie had taken my husband's money and used that money in a ritual so that we cannot do anything with the money that my husband was getting from his salary. After me and my husband had gotten married, my auntie was always asking for money, but she is someone who was already working in the government. It's like she will always know that we now have money in the house. Whenever we will have money in the house, then my auntie will come and she will be always asking for money, as if she know you will give her the money that will be in your house. Me and my husband noticed that whenever we would give auntie money, then we will have bad luck in our house. There was a time when I had given my auntie money, but still she complained that it was as if I didn't want with my money, because I had told her that I don't have money, but later on I ended up giving her the money that was left in the house. That is when she said, why does it look like you didn't want to give me your money? After that, when auntie had left, me and my husband, we had a very big fight, as if we were not a husband and wife, and we fought over a small issue. At that time, another lady who was staying next door, she believed in these things of ancestors. She gave us some herbs and she said, use these herbs, because the way that you are fighting, there is an evil spirit that is in your house. The first night that we burnt those herbs, it was around 7 p.m. Then we were watching TV. When we were watching TV, we had a knock on the door. And when we opened, it was my auntie. She didn't want to get into our house. And my son said that auntie is standing at the door. She is in a rush. She wants to see dad. Me and my husband, we went outside and we saw that she didn't even switch off her car, and she was in that mood like she is in a hurry. So we thought that it was some kind of an emergency. When we started to speak with her, she just pulled out a 20 rand note. Then she said that, "Here is your money. You once gave me this money." My brother, it was only a 20 rand note, but she had chosen to drive from the location that she stays, and she came to the location where we were staying at that time so that she can just give us that 20 rand note. And she was coughing a lot. After she had given us the money and left, we didn't get inside our house. We went next door with that money to that woman, and we told that woman everything that had happened. She said that my husband needs to be washed because inside of him there is poison that was left by a creature of the night. My husband is someone who is not patient enough, because that woman who was helping us, in the end, she refused to help us because my husband was using all kind of herbs. If my husband will drive to Eastern Cape, he will come back having a lot of herbs in his bag. If he goes to another province, he will come back with a lot of herbs. So that woman ended up refusing to help us because she said that if I continue helping you, tomorrow you will say that I have given you a topology. The way that you are chasing after these things, it is just too much. But be careful not to touch herbs that will burn your fingers. She said that my husband was like a curious baby that is being drawn to the fire by its glow and not knowing the danger of a blazing fire. Out of curiosity, the baby will try to grab the flames of the fire, and in turn, the baby will suffer the consequences of touching the fire. But I tried to tell my husband to be patient and deal with one traditional person at a time so that he can know who gave him the herbs that are not good. But my husband is a man who is always stubborn like that. What he thinks is what he does. One day, my husband came back home. He had a passport in hand. And I said, "Why do you need a passport?" Then my husband said that he was going to travel with his so-called brother from across the border. My husband and his new friend then traveled together to a place called Gwanda. And when he came back, the first thing that he did is that he showed me the strength of his manhood. Yes, it was now working perfectly, but he had also enlarged it such that it was no longer enjoyable. After this incident, he kept traveling back and forth until one day he returned back home with a flower that was inside a large glass bowl. As I am writing this to you, brother, someone just switched off the TV, yet I am home alone. But we are used to all of these mysterious things that happen in our house. Sometimes you can just hear the TV being switched on even when you are in your bedroom, but we are used to that stuff. When he came back, my husband, I was at my parents' house. He called me to come back home immediately, so I rushed back home and I saw that he had already placed a flower in our bedroom. I asked him what this flower was for that I had seen in our bedroom, and he said that the flower is for our protection. I don't know if my husband was using herbs to control my mind because, Brother Nashi, to tell you, I have no business to be in Zimbabwe, but me and my husband, we have been to that place called Gwanda more than 46 times. I also applied for a passport. Our passports are now filled with stamps of in and out. I will try to count all the times that we have been to Zimbabwe, but I truly didn't have any reason to travel there. The reason why I suspect that my husband did something to my mind, it is because I agree to everything that he says. Even if it is not normal, I will just agree to do it. At first, we used to buy a live chicken, then slaughter it. Whilst I'll be holding it on top of that flour. Then after we have slaughtered it, the blood will pour directly onto that flour as if we are watering the flower. After that, my husband started a very funny business of garden service. He said that he didn't want to be a truck driver anymore. I even questioned him, How can you say that you want to leave this job that is giving you at least a salary that is good? Because he was working for a very good company, but he told me that he wanted to start this company. So I let him to be. When my husband started his company of garden service, then I noticed that most of his customers, they overpay him, and they actually say that my husband's services are too cheap. My husband was overcharging his customers, but they will say that he is very cheap. As far as I know, people that hire these companies that do garden service, they do it so that they can save money. But my husband was being overpaid by these people. It was much better for these people to just find a gardener. At least they'll be saving money. After that, my husband, he won a cleaning service tender. Before he had gone to submit his papers at the municipality office, you know what he did, brother? Those papers, they stayed underneath that flower for about 1 week. I didn't know why he was doing that, but I started to understand everything that was going on after one day when my husband came back home rejoicing, and he told me that he had won a cleaning service. He had won a cleaning service tender. After the monies started pouring in, we moved out of the location. Then we went to the suburbs. After we had moved from the location to the suburbs, that is when I noticed that one morning the flower started to dry out. My husband told me that we had to drive back to Zim, and we were told that in order for this flower to be alive again, we had to water that flower, but using my period blood. This was so difficult for me, but I just accepted. Like I told you that anything that my husband tells me, I'll end up accepting whatever he has asked me to do. When we traveled back from Zim, and we waited for my periods to come. When I was on my periods, what I'll do is that whenever I will feel like urinating, I'll take this small bucket, then I will urinate in that small bucket, and the urine will be mixed with blood. I was doing this when I was on my periods. Then we would water that flower. This year, the flower dried again. We had to travel back to Zim, and we were told to look for pads and soak those sanitary pads in a bucket of water. Then at night, we were supposed to water the flower. We have been doing this since January this year. The way that we are getting these pads is that in our neighborhood, the municipality collect refuse bins once a week. So on the day that the municipality is supposed to come and collect the refuse bins from our area, early in the morning, there are those homeless people that go around opening the refuse bags that you would have placed outside of your yard. So my husband gives one of these guys 200 rands every week to go around looking for used pads. And that guy, he gives us those pads and we soak them in water. Sometimes the water will turn into red. No one knows this thing that we are doing. When we go to Zim, we just say that my husband cheated on me and he has a child there in Zim, so that our relatives cannot suspect anything. They think that I am just a supporting wife. Whenever we go to Zim, we buy a lot of groceries for that man who assisted my husband to get all of these things that we are using for our businesses. It's money, yes, but it's really exhausting, and I can't even assist some of my relatives. Recently, my brother's child, who is in university, struggled a lot with money, but I ignored her, not because we don't have money, but we can't help her. The flower refused us to help her. I just wanted to get this off my chest. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me. Then I had to ask one of our admins to give us a translation. Let us thank our admin who gave us that translation. Please let us talk about this issue in the comment section.